This is an AMI podcast.
I wondered what happened when you offered yourself to someone and they opened you, only to discover you were not the gift they expected, and they had to smile and nod and say thank you all the same. This is AMI Audiobook Review on AMI Audio. Thanks for listening to us. We like to talk all things audiobooks. I'm your host, Ramya Amuddin, here with Nisreen Abdelmajid, our technical producer for this show. And the quote that you heard today is from the book called My Sister's Keeper by Jodi Picoult. And this is a book that I have not read before. I'm in the middle of reading right now, but as most people will follow the title up with, oh, that's a great movie. So Nisreen, this was your reaction. You watched the movie.
Yeah, I remember watching this movie. It was such a unique one. I really liked it. I never read the book, though.
Okay, the book is incredible so far. It's one of the ones where you hear from many different characters, or at least several different characters in their perspectives. So different chapters are laid out in the perspective of the mom, the daughter, the attorney, the father, the sister, that kind of thing. And it's just so well done, basically because the story is so unique. I think that not just this book, but several books by Jodi Picoult are extremely unique in terms of content and storyline and just the kind of subjects that she chooses to cover. And a friend recommended not this one to me, but another one. And I thought, okay, well, might as well start with My Sister's Keeper because that seems to be a classic by this author. So that's where I started, and it was a really good choice. So, down the audiobook list line for you, Niz. This one might get added? Okay.
Yes. I don't know. This is what I question about watching the movie first and then the book. I feel like I imagine the movie too much while I'm reading. And I was going to ask you this before. Do you prefer reading the book first or watching the movie? Because if I were to read the book, I definitely would read the book first before the movie, just to kind of expand my imagination.
Most definitely. I always, if I know or if I have checked it out first, would go for the book first. Because what happens is going from the movie to the book is like going backwards a little bit, like you said, right? You're going to have the scenery, the visuals, the character voices all in your head with the movie first. So it might feel like a little too much to go back in and get the details of the book. But flipped, if you read the book first and then you go and you watch the movie, you might never like the movie. I'm not going to lie to you because the books were so incredibly detailed. And of course, you can't get every detail into the movie, right?
Very true.
Yeah. Well, let's move on to checking out our CELA homepage, which we love to do on this show. CELAlibrary.ca is where you go for this information. Featured titles for this week are The Madness of Crowds by Louise Penny, Mysteries and Crime Stories, Taste, My Life Through Food by Stanley Tucci, and this is food writing. The last one under the featured titles category is The Heart Principle by Helen Hone, and this is contemporary romance. We'll discuss this book a little in more detail further on. Now, there is an announcement on the CELA homepage that we thought we'd share with you. This one's actually from the blog. CELA is delighted to announce expanded delivery options, and this is a pilot project. So this blog post was released December 10th of this year and written by Lindsay Tyler. CELA has been committed to providing users real choices in the materials they read and how they access those materials. As part of that commitment, we're excited to announce the Expanded Delivery Options pilot project. Through this project, we'll explore new technologies and options for service delivery, which will give our users additional ways to access the CELA content that they love. The pilot program is focused on testing new options for audiobook delivery to supplement the digital options already available. Over the next few months, selected CELA users will be invited to provide feedback on one of three options: a low-cost, portable, easy-to-use audiobook, a Daisy Player test model that uses a reloadable storage device and which provides excellent sound quality and large buttons for easy access, and a voice assistant application for smart speakers. The three options were selected for this project based on a number of criteria with a focus on ensuring there would be options to meet the needs of all Sela users. Sela has hired peer trainers who, along with the project coordinator, will support the participants participating in this project. In choosing which options to pilot, we've been careful to consider criteria like cost, access to reliable internet, and comfort levels with newer technology. The feedback gathered in this pilot will give us the information we need to assess these options and, if they're successful, to have supportive resources available which have been developed with input from our users. This project has been funded through the federal government by a generous grant from Innovation Science and Economic Development Canada. We're going to welcome interested users to let us know that they'd like to participate by completing the pilot project sign-up form, and you can get more information on that and everything else on the Sela website, celalibrary.ca. Nazreen, before we get on to the next part of our show, what's trending this week?
Yes, ma'am. So audiobooks.com tweeted out this week's hottest releases. Of course, we start off with Unprotected by Billy Porter, a memoir, Widow Falls by Kirsten Modglin, and The Cheat Sheet by Sarah Adams is the third on the list, and it's a romance sporty book. It's one of those typical romance books, the I'm in love with my best friend type of book. The fourth hottest release is Creative Types by Tom Bissell. And the final one I'm going to mention was also one of last week's hottest releases. It's called W.E.B. Griffin Rogue Asset by Andrews and Wilson. And those were the top 5 out of the hottest book releases on audiobooks.com. And just a little teaser, Ramya, next week, we're going to talk all Christmassy holiday books, right? Because I'm excited.
Yes, we are. So am I. I'm very excited. And we're going to be talking a lot more than just holiday reads too, Nazreen. We're going to reflect on some of the reads that we've had from 2021. Something a little more serious, just things that have stuck to us or that we feel like are hitting us in the gut when we read them, because we've had some serious reads throughout 2021. So looking forward to that reflection period next week as well. AMI Audiobook Review on AMI Audio. I'm Ramya Amuddin, your host, here with Nisreen Abdelmajid, and it's time for the ever so popular Pause or Play. We glanced over a few books from the Sela homepage, celalibrary.ca, under the featured book section, and now we're going to press pause or play on one of these listens. Today, we have The Heartbreak Principle by Helen Hone. And this is a contemporary romance, so let's see what you think of it. When violinist Anna Sun accidentally achieves career success with a viral YouTube video, she finds herself incapacitated and burned out from her attempts to replicate that moment. And when her longtime boyfriend announces that he wants an open relationship before making a final commitment, a hurt and angry Anna decides if he wants an open relationship, then so does she. Translation: she's going to embark on a string of one-night stands. That's where tattooed motorcycle riding Guan Deep comes in. Their first attempt at a one-night stand fails, as does their second and their third, because being with Quan is more than just sex. He accepts Anna on an unconditional level that she's just started to understand herself. However, when tragedy strikes Anna's family, she takes on a role that she's ill-suited for until the burden of expectations threatens to destroy her. Anna and Quan have to fight for their chance at love, but to do that, they also have to fight for themselves. Contemporary romance, everybody. Nazreen, over to you. Do you press pause or play on this one?
You already know I'm going to play. I like the romance books. No shame in that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's that the kind of comfort, the plot's going to be this way or that.
The
The
type of
man, the
bad
other
boy
man.
is on the side, but that's my type of book.
Okay, I like it. It's firm and simple. Sam, over to you. Pause or play on this contemporary romance.
Oh, I mean, you guys are gonna think that I won't listen to this. I absolutely will. Oh,
Really?
yeah, no, absolutely. Mostly just because I think it's quite interesting. I mean, this is a very modern story. You're talking about, polyamorous relationships and whatnot. I think exploring those types of relationships are much more common these days, and so I think that it's only fitting that our romance novels should also reflect that. So yeah, I'm
Mhm.
I'm I'm playing this.
Okay, look at you, Sam. I know there's a lot of this self-discovery, self-love, trying to even the word burnout. I was like, oh wow, yeah, no,
Yeah.
definitely 2020, 2021 vibes. Awesome. We're checking in with an avid audiobook listener, everybody. We're opening up this space to review, discuss, recommend, browse, conceptualize, and reminisce on audiobooks. And the voice that you're hearing is Sam Robinson. We're welcoming him into the show, technical producer at AMI Audio. And you know what, Sam? It doesn't end there because you wear many, many, many hats as you've pressed play on this contemporary romance.
That's right. Yeah, no, I've done a couple of things. I do a lot of the podcasts at AMI, and I'm so happy to get to be here because I am a lifelong audiobook fan, and sometimes I don't get to listen to as much as I like anymore. But I would say that I probably listen to more audiobooks than I do read normal books even these days.
And that's what I was going to ask you. So, full disclosure, you're sighted, but you're a huge audiobook listener.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, for a long time, I understood why one would want to listen to an audiobook. I'm not that old, so I knew about podcasts and audiobooks and all that stuff from a very young age. And it made sense because we would listen to audiobooks on tape when we went on long drives, me and my family. And as well, I just found it more easy to sort of flit in and out of paying attention to
Mm.
audiobooks sometimes. And for a while, I would always listen to audiobooks while I fell asleep. So it makes sense that I'm here now.
Yeah,
sight
yeah.
sight
No,
notwithstanding.
exactly. And the thing is, because you can kind of flip between the two, right? Reading print books or ebooks, I guess, but using your vision to read versus audio, do you find that you're only listening to audio either a certain time of day or when you're in a certain mood? Like what is it?
I mean, I think it does help to be able to have a period of time that you can carve out to really buckle down and actually listen to what you are trying to listen to. Yeah, there's so many distractions these days too that those moments when you can be truly uninterrupted and listen to something can be few and far between. So I found that when the pandemic hit and I was working from home, my commute was gone, and my commute was where I did so much of my listening. Um,
Mm,
I I think nowadays, though, I still get to have a small commute. My son is in daycare, and he's about maybe a half hour walk where his daycare is. So I walk him there, or I go to pick him up. And I have half of that journey where I'm on my own, and so that's where I've been carving some time out. And as well, if I have any long journeys on my own, or if I'm sitting down and I know that I don't have to do any audio work, because the problem with being an audio content producer basically is
right.
that like your attention can't actually be divided all that well. My wife sits behind me while we work, and she is always listening to music because she doesn't have to edit audio or anything like that.
Mm.
So I really do actually have to make the carve out the time, because if I'm working, it means that I can't really listen to anything else other than what I'm doing. And I try to split my attention. It's not good. It doesn't work that way.
It's hard. Yeah, you gotta split your brain in half for that kinda thing with
That's
audio.
right.
It's
Yeah.
it's really true. Okay, this is amazing. I'm so glad we got some context because I know you're a huge audiophile. You listen to, more than just audiobooks, lots of podcasts and such, but,
Yeah.
in the audiobook world, we're always curious with our sighted friends. So, I wanna get to the recommendation that you have for us today. It sounds really, really interesting. So, give us some context on that.
Well, so this is a multi-layered, and stop me if anything sounds out of place here, but the book that we're going to be reviewing today is The Anthropocene Reviewed, and it is by author John Green. Many listeners may know John Green from his young adult novels, Searching for Alaska, Paper Towns, The Fault in Our Stars, which also got turned into a major motion picture movie with Ansel Elgort and Shailene Woodley. So this is a very well established young adult author, but and while I'm avoiding getting to the actual book, mostly because John Green himself is a really quite interesting and amazing figure, mostly because of his work outside of being an author. He's a very, very prominent YouTube and just early internet adopter. He and his brother started a project on YouTube that was ostensibly just them keeping in touch with each other with video blogs, a vlog, so to speak. And essentially what they were doing was trying to keep in contact with each other. So they would constantly send each other these videos over YouTube. And other people started picking up on them and watching them and listening, and they got this huge fan base because, John Green himself is an author. He also has a history in the priesthood. He actually trained to be a priest and was a chaplain at a children's hospital, and that is actually where his career as a chaplain stopped and his career as a writer started. So John Green has this amazingly large internet presence, and that kind of ties in a lot with the content that he makes for his books, which are largely young adult novels. And so the Anthropocene Review is actually a bit of a departure for John. It's actually and here's another interesting way of how books actually get made. The Anthropocene Review actually started as a podcast. It was a podcast that was produced by WNYC and Complexly, and essentially what it was John Green doing one or two aspects of the modern age, and he gives it a rating out of, a 0 to 5 stars, basically. And that was the whole concept. And if you can imagine all the context that I've given up to who John Green is, his specific style, which is a young adult specific focus, but as well, he's got the kind of gentleness and profundity in his speaking of a chaplain, which he is also trained as. So I find him to be like one of the most poignant authors, let alone one of the most poignant young adult authors, which I think is a really undervalued area of literature these days.
Most definitely. And young adult novels, first of all, are spiking. Like, we're seeing a lot of authors, and not just authors, but any kind of promotion and just adaptation of different people going, hey, we need to kind of spread the word on YA, which is really awesome. But do you think that people who have picked up the other novels by Green, as you mentioned, right, Fault in Our Stars, etc., would pick this one up naturally, or do you think there has to be a fascination for this kind of thing to begin with?
That's a really good question, actually, Ramya. I think John Green has enough of a following already that many people who were interested in his YA work, they have a good knowledge of what his style is, and also of the brand that he kind of brings to it too, which is truly just poignant. It's poignant work. So to get into what the actual book is, the reason why it's a departure is because, all of his other stuff is usually fiction. Any of the work that he's done that is nonfiction is work through his various YouTube channels, one of which is called Crash Course. And they have all these Crash Course history, Crash Course literature, all these different things. And these are incredibly great teaching tools for high school students and elementary school students. But I really liked the sort of scope of what he's trying to do with the Anthropocene Reviewed, because if you imagine trying to take a podcast and turn it into a book, that's incredibly difficult. But so don't try to change the style of the book too much to build upon the podcast. It's exactly as it is. It is a set of small essays that explore a facet of our modern life, the Anthropocene, which is the geologic era that incorporates the fact that humans now have the ability to affect geological ages. We will be known, like, anthropologists in the future, a million years from now, could look and say, here's where humans are. And and it's just such a wide variety of topics that he gets onto that really just, I don't know, just I was so into it. Some of my favorite ones so far were like orbital sunrises. So
Oh,
the idea of being in an orbit and watching the sunrise come up, which only astronauts usually have
oh my gosh,
the
yeah.
view of, or Icelandic hot dog stands. Signing
Wow,
your
that is
name
so specific.
250,000 times. And that last one there is due to the fact that John Green often will have copies of his books signed by him physically for
Mhm.
purchase for people who pre-order. And he had made the decision to do every one of them by hand. So he did
My goodness.
250,000 signatures of his own and discussed it. And I think that, like, these things seem mundane or maybe not as interesting. John Green has a way of making all these things seem poignant and interesting, and just I don't know. I love listening to the podcast, and there are a couple of extra essays that were not in the podcast that are included in the book. So you do have to listen to the
Okay.
audiobook if you want them all.
Exactly, and that's what I was gonna say about the kind of way that they've approached it, because all of this, like you said, it's available on, podcast form, but why do the audiobook then? First of all, of course, there's a platform for
Mhm.
audiobook,
Yep,
people, right? But that along with that, they've put that exclusive style, and you said he narrates it himself, so do
he
you
does.
find him great as a performer?
Oh, absolutely. John Green, first of all, is a person who knows his own voice best.
Mm,
And he is also incredibly well practiced in the art of narration. He has narrated all of his books that have turned into audiobooks. And as well, he's a media professional. His YouTube channel is very high quality, so no one has to concern themselves thinking that this is some sort of self-publishing kind of deal. Super high quality. And the on the topic of whether or like, why do the audiobook if you've got the podcast, or why do the podcast if you've got the audiobook? Well, obviously the audiobook has like great little parts to it, parts that you won't get from the podcast, but the podcast also has things that aren't in the audiobooks, that being ads. Now, that's not something you'll hear me say often, like, I can't wait to listen to the ads. But if you think of all the things that I said, the personality driven content that he does, it's the podcast ads are so funny and
wow.
relevant and interesting. I have to plug both of them. You got to listen to both of them if you can.
That's amazing. Well, I mean, for anyone who has had no clue who John Green is, I think that this is a great start to it, because not only can you start at the audiobook, but you can start way back at the podcast, take it in a more digestible form, right? So
Yeah.
that's
And he
fantastic.
also has a podcast with his brother called Dear Hank and John.
Oh, there you go. So they've moved that vlog situation into podcast.
Very funny too. Like, and just what I would also like to say to wrap it up is that, he writes for a young adult audience,
Mm,
and I think that that's actually the best place for adults to be too. It gives you a kind of empathy for
yep.
what they are going through, because we have all been through it, but it's a continued empathy, and I think that comes across most in John Green's work.
I was going to say similarly that it's really great for not just nostalgia, but for some kind of keeping in touch with the YA audience if you're
Mhm.
beyond the YA years and still reading these novels. Sam, thank you so much for joining us here on Audiobook Review. We really, really appreciate it, and I'm sure we'll check in with you soon.
Well, I'm so happy that you guys had me on, and as John Green likes to say, don't forget to be awesome.
Oh, I love that. That's awesome. Sam Robinson, audio technical producer here at AMI Audio, and he was reviewing and giving us a recommendation of the Anthropocene reviewed by John Green. That's a wrap for AMI Audiobook Review this week. We'll catch up with you in about 7 days. Until then, happy audiobook listening.
This was an AMI podcast. For more accessible media, visit ami.ca.